That evening, right after dinner, Quintus had all the campers dressed for Capture the Flag. All right, everyone, gather round, Quintus said. For tonight's game, you will all be in teams of 2. Your goal is simple. Collect a laurel wreath without dying. The wreath is wrapped in a silver package like this. There will be 1 silver package on each of the 6 monsters I've released into the woods. But only one holds the wreath, and you must find it before the other teams. And of course, you'll have to slay the monster to get it and stay alive. The task sounded pretty straightforward. After all, slaying monsters was what they trained for. I will call out 2 names at a time, so listen up, please. He took out a big scroll and read the names. The Stoll brothers are together, as usual. Selena Beauregard with Charles Beckendorf. They both seemed to like that, and Selena's cabin mates giggled. Clarice LaRue with Lee Fletcher. Annabeth Chase with Percy Jackson. Nice, Percy thought. Grover Underwood with Tyson. What? Grover panicked. No, Tyson shouted. Big mistake. No complaining, Quintus ordered. You all have 2 minutes to prepare, so get with your partners. It was still light when they made it far into the woods, but the tree shadows didn't make it look any better. Percy and Annabeth followed a trail of footprints which seemed to be made by something with a lot of feet. They trailed into the west, and they stopped near the giant pile of rocks which they called Zeus's Fist. Percy remembered making this the base for when they played Capture the Flag with the Hunters of Artemis last winter. Then Percy said, I gotta tell you something. What? Annabeth asked. He explained how an iris message in the fountain automatically showed Nico talking with a ghost, and he was giving Nico bad advice. Spirits are never good advisors. They resent the living, Annabeth said. He's coming for me, said Percy. And the ghost said something about leading Nico through a maze. That settles it then, said Annabeth. We had to figure out the labyrinth. I still don't know who sent the message to me, Percy said, or even if Nico was aware, or... A bush rustled behind him. It was just Juniper. Juniper? What are you doing in there? Annabeth asked. I live here, of course, she answered. This is a juniper bush. I thought you were Grover when I heard you coming. I'm worried about him. He seems so distraught. Every year he searches for Pan, and every year it gets worse. I thought at first he was seeing another nymph. What? No, Grover's not that kind of guy, Annabeth said. I saw him once picking berries from a blueberry bush. Juniper, Grover would never bother trying to talk to another nymph, said Annabeth. He's just stressed about his searcher's license. Please, said Juniper, you can't let him go underground. It may be the only way to help, said Annabeth. If only we knew where to start. About that... There was another rustling sound nearby, and she yelled, Hide! She vanished into green mist. Coming out from around the corner was a giant amber scorpion with a silver package tied to its tail. Then 2 other scorpions appeared on the other side. 3, said Annabeth. That's not possible. The whole woods and half the monsters come to us? Percy thought about that for a moment. 1 was no problem, 2 would take a bit of luck, and 3 was doubtful. They backed up against Zeus's fist, and Percy suggested to climb the top. But Annabeth convinced him it was no good. Those tails would be long enough to reach them. They both ran around the boulder, but the scorpions caught up to them. Percy tried to think. If he stabbed at the front of the body, the stinger would just hit him from above. Even if he could slice it at the stinger, the claws would attack him on either side. They could do nothing but defend, and they couldn't keep that up for very long. Percy took another step back, and then there was nothing behind him. There was a huge opening in the rocks, which Percy was sure was not there before. "In here," he told Annabeth. She dodged a claw and crawled in. Then, Percy's mind took a few seconds to process when she pulled him in a little too fast and they tumbled into a pit. The next thing they knew, they were both inside a dark cavern and the opening was gone. They both would have thought anybody would have discovered this cavern under Zeus's fist by now. Percy raised up his glowing sword and realized the cave was longer than they expected. "It's a hallway," Annabeth said. "Don't take another step," she said, sounding afraid. "We have to find the exit again. We have to find the Mark of Daedalus." "The Mark of what?" "Over here, found it," she said. She pressed her hand on a small delta symbol printed on the wall, and it glowed blue. The wall slid open, and there was a night sky outside, and they could hear voices calling their names. Seconds later, they ran into Clarice, who was wearing the laurel wreath. The campers behind her were carrying torches. "Where have you two been?" Clarice asked. "We've been searching for you forever." "We were only back there for a few minutes," said Percy. Then Chiron, Tyson, and Grover appeared. "Percy," Tyson said. "You're not dead! Yay!" "We're fine," said Percy. "There were 3 scorpions, so we hid underneath the rocks in Zeus's fists. It was barely 2 minutes. "Percy," Chiron said, "you've been missing for almost 2 hours. The game ended after the first 20 minutes. "We would have won if a Cyclops hadn't sat on me," Grover said, looking at Tyson. "It was an accident," Tyson said. "So you found it, didn't you?" Clarice asked. "You found—" "Tonight is not the night," Chiron said. "It's not the time or place. Everyone back to your cabins now, and get some sleep." And so they did. As everyone walked back, they all started talking among one another, and Clarice said, "This explains a lot. A lot about what Luke's after." "What do you mean?" Percy asked. "Percy, we found an entrance to the Labyrinth," said Annabeth. "But the fact that it leads straight into camp? That's not good." It was hard for Percy to fall asleep that night. But when he finally did, he dreamed of a boy crouching alone in a Greek prison. Wooden crates sat around the room with bronze tools spilled out. There was a compass, a saw, and a bunch of other things Percy didn't recognize. Then the door opened, and an old man was thrown inside to join the boy. "Father, what did they do to you?" "I'll kill you," he yelled at the guards. "There will be no killing today," said the man in the white robes. "You helped the Athenian kill my Minotaur, Daedalus. You turned my own daughter against me." "You did that yourself, your majesty," the old man croaked. A guard planted a kick in the old man's ribs, and he groaned in agony. "Stop it!" the young boy cried. "You love your mace so much," the king said, "I've decided to let you stay here. This will be your new workshop. Make new wonders for me. Amuse me. Every maze needs a monster, and you shall be mine." "I do not fear you," the old man groaned. "But a man who cares so much about his son displeases me, old man, and the next time my guards inflict punishment, it will be on him." The king swept out of the room, and his guards slammed the door shut, leaving the boy and his father alone in the darkness. "What will we do, father? They will kill you." "Take heart, my son. I will find a way." Percy was still feeling shaky the next morning when Chiron called a war council. Chiron and Quintus sat at the front. Clarice and Annabeth sat right next to each other and led the briefing. Tyson and Grover sat as far away from each other as possible. Also present around the table were Juniper, Selena, the Stoll brothers, Beckendorf, and Lee Fletcher. Even Argus, the 100-eyed security chief, was present, which let Percy know how serious the situation was. Luke must have known about the Labyrinth entrance, Annabeth said. He knew everything about camp. Percy thought he heard a little pride in her voice, like she still respected the guy as evil as he was. And that's what I was trying to tell you last night, Juniper said. The cave entrance has been there for a long time. Luke used to use it. Selena frowned. You mean you knew about the entrance and you didn't even say anything? Juniper's face turned green, quite literally. I didn't know it was important. It's just that I don't like caves. She has good taste, Grover said. Interesting, Quintus said. And you believe this young man Luke would dare use the labyrinth as an invasion route? Definitely, Clarice said. If he could get a whole army of monsters inside camp, just pop up in the middle of the woods without having to worry about the magical boundaries, we wouldn't stand a chance. He could wipe us out easily. He must have been planning this for months. He's been sending scouts into the maze, Annabeth said. We know because we found one. We found Chris Rodriguez. Ah, yes, Quintus said. The one in the... Yes, I understand now. The one in the what? Percy asked. Clarice glared at him. The point is, Luke has been looking for a way to navigate the maze. He's searching for Daedalus's workshop. Percy remembered his dream the night before, with the bloody old man in the tattered robes. You mean the guy who created the maze? He asked. Yes, said Annabeth, the greatest architect and greatest inventor of all time. If the legends are true, his workshop is in the center of the labyrinth. He's the only one who knew how to navigate the maze perfectly. If Luke managed to find the workshop and convince Daedalus to help him, Luke wouldn't have to fumble around searching for paths or risk losing his army in the maze's traps. He can navigate anywhere he wanted to quickly and safely. First to Camp Half-Blood to wipe us out, then to Olympus. The room was silent. Finally, Beckendorf spoke up. Back up a second, Annabeth. Shouldn't Daedalus be dead by now? Quintus grunted. I believe so. He lived, 3,000 years ago? And even if he were alive, don't the old stories say he fled from the labyrinth? That's the problem, my dear Quintus. No one knows, Chiron said. There are many disturbing rumors about Daedalus, but the one is that he disappeared back into the labyrinth towards the end of his life. He might still be down there. Percy thought about the old man in his dream. He looked so frail, it was hard to believe he'd last another week, much less 3,000 years. We need to go in there, Annabeth said. We have to find the workshop before Luke does. If Daedalus is alive, we can convince him to help us before Luke does. If Ariadne's strings still exist, we make sure it never falls into Luke's hands. Now wait a second, Percy said. If we're worried about an attack, why not just blow out the entrance, seal the tunnel? Great idea, Grover said. I'll get the dynamite. It won't be that easy, stupid, Clarice growled. We tried that with the entrance we found in Phoenix. It didn't go well. The labyrinth is magical architecture, Percy, Annabeth said. It would take huge power to seal even one of its entries. In Phoenix, Clarice demolished the whole building with a wrecking ball, and the maze entrance just shifted a few feet. The best we can do is prevent Luke from learning to navigate the labyrinth.